Good evening and welcome to the special edition of ET Now Startup Central. Like yesterday, we are coming to you from the NASSCOM Product Conclave in Bengaluru that concluded this evening with a very interesting session by footballer Sunil Chhetri. But we kick off the show with an important voice from New Delhi, and that's Niti Aayog CEO Amitabh Kant. My colleague Rahul Dama caught up with him for an exclusive interview on startups, what the government is doing, and also his take on the whole data localization debate. Listen into this interview with Amitabh Kant.
I think all our startups must think globally. You can use the domestic market as a springboard, but essentially the challenge for our startups is to penetrate global markets. They must think big, they must think large, they must think how whatever you do, the world is your market. Don't look at just the 1.3 billion people of India. Because if you are able to find solutions for our farmers, if you're able to find solutions to our learning outcomes, if you're able to find solutions for our health issues, then you'll be actually finding solutions for the next 7.5 billion people of the world who will be moving from poverty to middle class in the next decade. And that's a huge market.
Got it.
But I also wanted to, like I said, no country in the world has made it big without being a great exporting nation. Japan, Korea, China, all of them, they exported. And therefore, penetrating global markets and maturing from a startup to a top-class company is the key.
Got it. Especially on the EV push that you spoke about, huge potential that India has to solve for that market. Regulatory-wise, even the government has put its might behind, ambitious plans. But how can startups really play a larger role in this, considering these are innovative, new-age technologies that they should really be working on?
So, my view is that there are two areas where India must make it big, and these are sunrise areas. One is about storage and batteries, and we are giving a huge push to renewables, and that's India is so oil dependent that we need to move towards renewable, and that's India's strength. And second is, as India moves towards the electric vehicle, 76% of our vehicles are two-wheelers. How do we put batteries on? How do we bring in electric scooters? How do we bring in electric bikes? How do we put batteries on them? And how do we do retrofitting of batteries on our vehicles? Because they contribute close to about 35% of the emission. It's not merely the four wheelers, but two-wheelers is a critical challenge. And these are two areas where Indian startups can bring in a huge amount of disruption, huge amount of innovation, and the whole world is your market.
Got it. Sir, on data localization, of course, RBI took a very strong stand. The government has said that the sectoral regulators will have to sort of look at, of course, the data protection law is in works, but still a lot of scope there in terms of what happens and how it would impact the entire startup ecosystem really.
So I think the government is still examining it, this issue. We've had the Sri Krishna Committee report, which looks at a broader perspective. Some sectoral regulators have taken a view. Important thing is that this is data belonging to individuals in India. And while it's important to retain data, it's also important that we become an innovative country. And we are able to open up some data to our own startups and open data to our academicians and our researchers, so that it's unlike America, where data is owned by private companies, Google and Facebook, or unlike China, where it's opened by Tencent and Alibaba. In India, a lot of data is owned by public entities. We need to put that out in a systematic, scientific manner for innovation, for startups. We shouldn't allow our startups to get data starved. This is the world of artificial intelligence. This is the world of machine learning. And therefore, if you expect them to find solutions to your problems, you need to put that data out for them. You need many of our academicians and our research and our IITs and our engineering institutes all to do research around data. So we need to find the right balance between this.
That's the word coming in from Amitabh Kant, very strongly batting for data localization, saying Indian companies cannot be data starved. But moving away from that to another important voice, and that of course is NASSCOM chairman and Wipro's board member and chief strategy officer Rishabh Premji. I caught up with him to understand how digital is really impacting technology spends, and also his take on the startup ecosystem in India if product and enterprise companies can potentially have the same game-changing impact that IT services companies have had. Listen in to Rishad Premji's interview.
Based on the results that you've seen from multiple companies, it seems to be broad-based, and certainly demand seems to be buoyant, and verticals that were perhaps not doing well on a broad basis before are also picking up. And I think just the fact that the economies of the world are doing well, that hopefully translates well for technology spend as we move forward as well. So
And
I'm hopeful.
The biggest markets, particularly the US and BFSI, which has been the bread and butter for IT, that's doing well now.
Correct. So
Okay.
so as I said, it bodes well, I think.
Right. And in terms of the uncertainty around digital, initially, there was a lot of uncertainty on just what clients are going to do. Is there a lot more certainty now on just where they want to spend, how they want to spend? Is that why we are seeing some sort of a resurgence coming back to the sector?
No, I think as you look at digital spend and digital growth for most of the players, it's been very positive this quarter.
Right.
Look, I think the movement on industrialization of spend around digital, the fact that most people want to modernize their applications, move to cloud native applications, really redesign, reimagine their processes, I think that bodes well for digital spend, and so clearly bodes well more broadly for technology services companies as well.
Right. The other issue that's been weighing on everyone's minds is a double whammy of sorts coming from the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. They've said that as part of the fall session, they're not just going to review the definition of specialty occupation under H-1B, but they will also revoke work permits of H-4 users. Is this going to be a big dent at all, or has visa usage been coming down with localization efforts being stepped up by companies?
Yeah. So I think one should not read too much into it because there's nothing new that has been mentioned. It's simply a repeat as a part of the mention of what the issues they're going to cover. They're going to raise what issues they're going to consider covering. So I would not be too overtly concerned about what you're reading into that. Two is exactly to your point. Broadly, the industry is localizing quite aggressively. And if I look over the last 2 years, the usage of visas by Indian technology services companies has come down dramatically. If I look at the usage of visas last year, the Indian IT companies use less than 15% of those visas. And it's important that we don't confuse the usage by Indian companies with how many
Vis-a-vis
Indians...
Indian professionals working
Exactly,
for multinational
vis-a-vis
companies.
Indian professionals. And they're very distinct facts, and oftentimes we tend to blur the two. So the dependency on visas is coming down. The issue is not a new issue that is being raised. And broadly, the industry is localizing
So it's not
quite
an
aggressively.
overhang, so to
So I would not be overly concerned. Absolutely, we must watch it and be on top of it. But I'm not overly concerned because it's not something new that's developed.
Are you optimistic of working this out at all with the government's help? Because, US has been able to push through whatever it's wanted to in the last few years. It's not just rhetoric anymore. So in terms of the bargaining power, are we there at all?
Look, these things, nothing has changed legislatively, right? There are a few changes in terms of requests for evidence,
right,
some
in terms of
administrative
processes.
but nothing has changed legislatively. So I think we've got to wait and watch before we jump the gun. And certainly as an industry association, we are very much on top of it, working closely with our stakeholders, working closely with government, working closely with partners. So I'm quite hopeful that we will resolve this to everyone's satisfaction as this
Right.
moves forward.
Right, we are at the NASSCOM Product Conference, so I have to ask you about the way product and enterprise startups have taken off in India. Does it have the potential to mirror what IT services has been able to do? It's the biggest private sector employer today. It's sort of put India on the global map. Do you think our startups are too skewed towards consumer-facing ones because that's where all the headlines are, valuations are? Or are you seeing the enterprise side take off, deep tech take off?
Yeah, no, I'm certainly seeing more enterprise software companies emerging. And look, I'm very hopeful for the startup ecosystem in India and what it can do in terms of brand building, wealth creation, job creation for the country. And so it's still early days, but I think there's a huge amount of buoyancy building. I'm very impressed, even at an occasion like this, meeting the kind of companies you meet, their resilience, their ability to sort of break out of the pack, their ability to grow. So I'm very optimistic about the startup ecosystem in India.
Apart from the big guns, this is a place where you also come across very, very young entrepreneurs who are solving very complex problems using technology. And one person who I met today is 17-year-old Madhav Lavkare. Now, he's still pursuing his high school in New Delhi, but when he's not in school, he's built a startup, a product that will help differently able people view messages on a glass-like device. How does it work? Can this be a game changer? How long before this prototype actually becomes a product? Listen into my conversation with this 17-year-old entrepreneur.
What I'm holding in my hand is a affordable smart glass for the hearing impaired that captions speech to text and displays it on a heads-up display in the user's field of vision. So the problem set we're trying to tackle here is the communication gap between the hearing impaired and the hearing enabled. Right? So today, if you're hearing impaired, and I don't know sign language, so how do I come and talk to you, right? I'll either write down words on a piece of paper or take your phone, or you'll use some sort of speech to text. But I found that that's not really a fluid method of communication, and what ends up happening is that the hearing impaired community feels isolated from mainstream society, right? About 2 years ago, I started this venture, and the aim was to create an accessible platform.
And his venture is called Transcribe, so literally it transcribes speech to text.
And so the aim behind this venture was to create an accessible platform for the hearing impaired where they could fluidly communicate outside of their community and transcend the barriers of communication.
Right. If I look at the prototype, it's somewhat like what Google Glass used to be, right? I mean, of course, now it's not there, but you used to wear it and then you'll say, OK, Glass, and then the search results or the text would appear. So did that play an influence, and are you a little worried because Glass did not really take off? Though people found it very exciting at the time, it didn't take off. So are there lessons there that you perhaps learned while building this?
So I think the glass has been one part of the motivation of actually building this. So I was really interested in the glass a few years ago, but it didn't take off, as you said. So I was trying to figure out why didn't this amazing piece of tech take off, right? And so I think one of the reasons was it was really expensive, and for especially the hearing impaired community in India, we need something that's more affordable and in their reach. And the second thing was it was general purpose. It wasn't like they didn't have a specific use case, and people didn't really know, oh, this is cool, but what do I really use it for? And I think the second part of it was that I had a friend in school who left his school actually, and he was hearing impaired. And I asked him, why did you leave? He said, I couldn't really manage in an environment where everybody's hearing enabled and I can't communicate with them, so I didn't know what to do. And so those two things really combined to and gave birth.
Okay, the Google Glass didn't take off, but let's hope Madhav's low-cost glasses certainly take off, because they can play a huge role in really improving communication for the differently able. But on that note, time to take a short break, but don't go anywhere, because when we come back, we bring you two more very exciting startups in the IoT space, and we end with a very inspiring conversation with Sunil Chhetri, the star footballer. Take a break and come back for more on the other side of Startup Central. From a 17-year-old entrepreneur to two more exciting startups, this in the IoT or the Internet of Things space. Now, while one startup uses sensors to track cricketing shots, the other one performs complex health tests just at the flick of a switch with a pinprick. So two game-changing areas, one in sports and one in healthcare. How does it work? My colleague Rahul Dama caught up with these two founders to figure out. Check out the startup showcase.
We are here at NASSCOM Product Conclave, and of course, apart from all the action from the sessions and top speakers, the focus is also on startups who sort of exhibit the best that they have. The focus this time is deep tech, and you have a lot of AR, VR, IoT-enabled startups. This one, HoloSuit, that really uses AR, VR to give an entire idea and imaging of real-time experiences. How is it that you do it, and please show us what do you do?
Sure. So like this is HoloSuit, and this will track your entire body motion. Just like iPhone virtualized your fingers, we have virtualized your entire body so that you can interact in 3D. So for example,
show us, yeah.
I'll have you like wear this headset, and now you can actually experience like
Oh.
underwater. And you can see the coral reefs, and using the jacket, you will be actually able to unload and kind of like move around. You can see the person over there, and you can move around and actually have an experience of like swimming in this water. Like actually, you can see as swimming using the body. Like if you turn the
Got
other
it.
side, you actually swim around.
Interesting. So the big use case would be, for educational institutions, medical would be
Medical
training.
Like we have Yuvraj Singh as our brand ambassador, sports training, medical training, industrial training. We also have a lot of people who are using this for oil and natural gas.
Got it.
Virtualizing of the world.
Got it. Thank you so much. So this startup using AR, VR, very interestingly gives you a real-time experience. So if I were to really have my jacket on, that's the real experience that we would get. Also, Vitor, the startup that really uses IoT and for healthcare services, and they have really an innovative offering where they have these devices that in less than a minute would sort of give you updates on key parameters of health. As you can see, that's an ECG machine. I've tried it out and experienced it myself. Generally, it takes you a couple of hours to get that done. You also have to sort of visit an hospital and pre-book your appointments. The small device, you'll have to hold it in a particular way, of course, for over a minute, and you would have data once the test is done. It takes closer to a minute, and it would give out real-time information in terms of what parameters has the patient really seen. And they have this for hemoglobin, diabetes, other key ones, and they're largely focusing on the smaller markets. They work with hospitals, go out there and tell people what is it that patients should worry about. So this is how the result is generated. You have different parameters. So if you're in green, you don't have to worry, so the likes of blood pressure, sugar. The yellow one is still okay. You're probably
You're at risk, you need to take care of it.
But the red is really the alarm, which means you will have to then approach your doctor and ensure that you get it. And all of that really comes down to this small machine that prints out the key parameters. This is the healthcare startup doing it. Thank you so much. So this is how startups are using the technology really to drive some real change and use these technologies.
Okay, we end then with a session that I really enjoyed. I don't know what is it about sports persons and their amazing ability to impart the best life's lessons. This time around, it was ace footballer Sunil Chhetri who shared some interesting startup lessons from sports, what keeps him motivated, how he copes with the highs and the lows. Listen into an excerpt of his fireside chat right here at the Product Conclave.
If I score a hat-trick, and let's suppose I had 4-5 wrong passes or wrong touches or wrong decisions, I will never look on them. I will just brush them aside because I'm the king, people are chanting my name, I'm the boss, finish. But if I miss 3 chances, if my team loses, even the one small mistake, I will go again and again and then think about it. It's so strange, and I'm sure everyone will agree to it. When things are going fine, we never sit and think. When things are going wrong, we all sit. What is happening? How do I correct it? So failures have helped me a lot, more than what success has helped me. I know it's sad because you don't want to fail as a human being. You always want to be happy and be successful. But failure teaches you a lot. It keeps you humble. It tells you that, trust me, you are not invincible. It tells you that this is the reality. You got to go back to the drawing board, make sure you do all the hard work, and then come back again. It also gives you a chance to rejoice again. It puts you down, and then you again work hard, and then you win. It's like a cycle. You have to be God to be successful always. And none of us are here. So we will fail, and we'll again come back. I am a big fan of Ronaldo, because what he does is you can see and learn and aspire. He's somebody who works so hard. He changes his game as time passes on. He's somebody who adjusts to the game. He's so complete. He can head the ball. He's strong. He can dribble. He can shrug people off. Right, left, both finishing, everything. He's somebody that everyone should look up and try to emulate him or try to learn from him. Messi is a God gift. What he does, you can't teach. What he does is something unbelievable. Seriously, you watch his game, 10 minutes he'll be walking. Tell me one player who can walk for 10 minutes and the coach will not sack him. We have these GPSs, okay? Every player does 12 kilometers, normally. Messi does 9 kilometers, 40 sprints, 3 goals, 2 assists. How will you sack him? So when I watch Messi, there are things that he does is outside the books. You can't teach that. It's something inbuilt.
So that's the verdict then from Sunil Chhetri. While he calls Ronaldo a complete player, he says Messi is God's gift, so he's clearly the best player in the world. But on that note, it's really time to wrap up this special edition of ET Now Startup Central. We hope you enjoyed the show. But on that note, have a great weekend as well. And thanks so much for watching. Stay tuned to the channel for more news and updates.